Welcome to Circle Sanctuary Network Podcast, brought to you by Circle Sanctuary, one of the oldest nature spirituality churches in the United States, connecting people of nature-centered paths around the world. Join us through the week for a variety of shows discussing various topics, celebrating the divine in all of its forms, through nature worship, rituals, education, and building bridges of community.
Good evening, good morning, good night, good second breakfast, whenever you are, wherever you are. My name is Laura González, and I'd like to welcome you to Lunatic Mondays on CSNP, the Circle Sanctuary Network podcast. And tonight I have a guest that is a dear friend of mine, Chris Allaun. He has been studying witchcraft, magic, and paganism since 1992. He is one of the founders and an ordained minister with the Fellowship of the Phoenix. He has been an initiate of traditional witchcraft since 2002. He also has permission to carry the Lakota sacred pipe and walks the path of the Red Road. He teaches classes and workshops on magic, healing, shamanism, and necromancy. He has been teaching and writing for many years. He's the author of A Guide to Spirits, Underworld, Shamanism, Myth, and Magic, Deeper into the Underworld, Death, Ancestors, and Magical Rites, and Upperworld, Shamanism, and Magic of the Celestial Realms. He continues to study and teach the magical arts to those who seek to balance the three worlds in their own lives. And obviously today we're going to be talking about his new book, soon to be bestseller, because the Black Book of Johnathan Knotbristle. My dear friend Chris Allaun, welcome to Lunatic Mondays. How are you?
I'm, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy that we're wearing the same colors.
I know.
And it wasn't planned, and we're just like rolling with the blue. And it feels funny that you're here because, of course, you have on Lunatic Mondays frequent flyer miles. We're gonna give you another punch on your card because you keep writing books left and right. And I feel like I have just seen you because I have just seen you a couple of weeks ago when we were doing the other video blog that is yours, the Mystic Chat. Well, I should say it's ours.
It's
Um,
ours. It's everyone's.
yeah, and today I got you here as a guest. So for those who don't know about Mystic Chat and or follow you as much as I do, because I fangirl on him. Tell us how you've been since the last time that you was here on the show.
I think I was on the show a year or so ago.
Probably.
Um, let's see. So I just graduated a graduate program and I got my master's in divinity. So my career focus, other than teaching and writing and things like that, is I'm gonna be doing chaplaincy, spiritual care, hospice, hospital, stuff like that. Um, I mean, it's kind of the priest a craft. You actually, I'm actually gonna get paid for it. So, between that and my other day job and writing and teaching, that's what I've been up to.
That is so great. And it's funny that you mentioned, that is the work that you do, but now you're gonna get paid. People don't realize like how much work you do as a healer and as a necromancer and helping people I guess the dead and dying and transitioning and all that. I find that fascinating. I couldn't do it.
Mm.
It takes a special kind of spirit to, in my opinion, to accompany the dead, the people whom are dying rather.
Hmm.
But I like to work more with the survivors, with the family,
Yeah.
with that kind of stuff. So you and I should tag team and and work together.
This part of spiritual care is to work with the families too, because part of the program is that I have to intern as a chaplain at the hospital, and I've sat with many families who turned off the machines or a gunshot or some other tragedy, and it's powerful to sit with the family. It's powerful, and a lot of it is just being present and sharing your energy. So,
Yeah. And especially something that in the United States is so sterile, it's so sanitized. It's so like we don't talk about
right.
our emotions, we don't talk about our feelings, and we don't talk about the dead. And it's something that it should be talked about. And the process of dying to be as normal, because it is normal, as the birth, But when a new person comes into the world, we do all this hoopla and gender revealing and this and that. And yet, when a person is dying, I see a cat.
I know my cat, and the cat tail went into the screen.
I
It was
know
so
that was
funny.
funny. But anyway, with the dead and dying, there is such a taboo still.
I know.
So we need a lot of people, and we need people such as yourself and myself that aren't afraid to work with the dead. And I will never forget that you told me the actual meaning of being a necromancer, and
Right, right, right.
I'm a proud one. So and then he was telling me behind the scenes, so I'm gonna call him out. That he was like so busy, and didn't have time to write a book. So
Uh-huh.
he just sat over summer vacation and wrote this masterpiece, this wonderful book. Uh, Tell us a little bit about the process of working with local publishing house. Uh,
Cross Crow. Yeah,
yeah.
Cross Crow books. So I've known Blake and Wick for a while now, and they started a publishing company. And I have to tell you, I am so impressed with them. They're on point. They know what they're doing, but they also ask questions, and they want to learn. And anytime I have an idea or a thought, they're like, yeah, let's do it. Like they're game for anything, which I think is great. Um, so they were like, hey, Chris, I want you to write a book. And of course, I was in graduate school. So I was like, I don't have time because I was also have a full-time job as a massage therapist. So I said, hey, in the summer, I'm only taking one class versus four. So I have some time, although I don't have time to spend a whole year researching and writing and all those things. So I was trying to come up with something, and so in my tradition of traditional witchcraft, we work a lot with the witch ancestors. Those witches, magical people, healers, herbalists who who are spirits now, and so I basically said, and I didn't have a clue about what was going to happen. So I basically conjured the witch ancestors, and I said, inspire me, tell me. And so Johnathan, that isn't his real name, I changed it, is one of the witch ancestor spirits I work with. And I don't want to say I channeled I want to say I was inspired by the witch ancestors and their stories and things like that. And basically, I sat with them, and they would show me things and show me pictures and ideas and things like that. And I turned what they told me into a story. Um, because, the character of Johnathan is a real witch ancestor. However, I will admit that some of this story is embellished. I won't even say embellished. It's a poetic license because, they say, I did this, I did this, I did this. like, okay, so let's translate that into a story. So I wrote it in about 6 weeks, which was actually really fast. And part of it is that I have a spirit vessel um, that the witch ancestors come through with. I don't keep them in there. It's not like a genie bottle or anything like that. It's just like a doorway. And I would like light incense and say, okay, tell me what to do. And I would just get these ideas and I would, type, 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 type. And it was so much fun to write this. It just was like flowing through and things like that. And um, it was probably one of the easiest and most fun I've had writing because, when you're writing a book, like when I um, wrote the Underworld series and things like that, you have to research, you have to read and find resources, and you talk and you research and things like that. And it's fun, but it takes a lot of time and effort and energy. Whereas Johnathan Knotbristle was what um, I, one of my colleagues said that he thinks it was so simple to write because the story needed to be told. It needed to come out and come through. And one of the things I appreciate about Jonathan's story is that he's 15 years old. His family dies, and he has his old, country farm that's a very teeny tiny. And he becomes a witch out of necessity, because his family was a church-going family, and so you do what you got to do. And he was just trying to figure things out, and sometimes he succeeded, sometimes he failed, and he had questions, and he was shocked, and he was surprised, happy, scared. And a lot of the feedback I'm getting is that, like the other day, so someone said, "Oh my God, when I first started having doing witchcraft, I had the exact same thoughts, I had the exact same experience. I had, I was casting a spell and didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I was felt a certain way about it." And Johnathan said the exact same thing, and I was just like, Jonathan's human. He's universal, I think. He's one of those
Yeah.
people. He showed his vulnerability and his thoughts, and that's what I really liked about this story, because you know how some witchcraft books say, "Hey, here's a spell. Take a candle, take the incense, say this chant, the end." Well, Jonathan says, "Okay, let me tell you how I feel about it. Okay, well, I couldn't find a candle, and that kind of sucked." And
Yeah.
it was his thing, so it was good.
I love it, and I love that is I really like the oh my God, what is it called? The forward. Um I really like the forward, and I
Okay.
love
By
how
Ivo.
by Ivo. And I say evil always on my mind because he's human and is evil, but yeah, Ivo Dominguez. Um I like the how he tells us this is how you read this book, because
Right, right.
it's truly like you start seeing the first chapter and you want to get your hands on it right
Hmm.
away. Obviously there are um, spells, and obviously there are guides on how to do magic, and the book is, in my opinion, and I'm gonna be as bold as we are as friends, and I'm gonna tell you what my review will be. And in my opinion, it's a wonderful. It can read as a wonderful fictional
Hmm.
novel
Yeah.
because it grabs you and it keeps you entertained, and you want to know what's going to happen next and what's the next adventure and what he got his hands into, and what is the gossip on the town and what are the people saying, and uh, but you, I love because you're so clever and you're teaching us. or Johnathan is teaching us without sounding like he's lecturing us.
Mm-hmm.
And he's teaching the most valuable lessons that are those by experience, by
Exactly.
example. So he's telling us like, this is how I do it, and this is how it worked for me, and oops, it worked. You know,
Oops, it worked. I love it. It's true.
and a lot of the times we feel like that, you know, whether we
Mm-hmm.
are in my opinion, whether you are a seasoned witch or a very, very new seeker, that feeling, I think, is the excitement of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that feeling doesn't go away because I've been doing my thing for a while, and I can really identify with that, you know, like, I gotta do it, and then I did it, and then it worked, and he mentions a lot of the times like, wow, I felt so powerful after that, and I didn't know where
Right.
the power came from. So it really is very entertaining, and you're a great writer, and then
Thank you.
you taught us a lot of things. um how many of these experiences, okay, so you call on the ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
the one, it was just the one that came, or were there like a group of them that tell you stories?
So it was a group. However, Jonathan's voice came out a lot, the uh, the strongest. Um, and I don't really question stuff like that. I just, um, it when I wrote it, I would sit behind the computer and I have he has a vessel, and I would say, "Okay, show me," and they would show me, and just having this conversation the other day that sometimes when the spirits talk to you, it isn't always words. Sometimes they show you pictures. Sometimes you have a feeling. Sometimes you just have a thought, and you're like, "Well, that's not my thought. It has to be the spirits trying to talk to me." Because a colleague of mine was saying, "Oh, I don't know how to talk to spirits, but I can feel them. I know they're there. I get thoughts." I'm like, "Well, that's talking to the spirits." It's just, one of the things I think we need to really educate each other on is that just like how we all think differently, and you know how they say we all have different kinds of intelligence. Like, so for example, I'm a writer, and other people are mechanics, which I do not have that intelligence. I don't. Other people can see something and put it together, and it's fine. And they're still intelligent. It's just a different intelligence. So I think that how the spirits communicate with us has to do with how we learn, how we take in information. So when someone says, "Oh, I'm not psychic," I'm like, "I think you are. We just have to find out what your thing is, you know?"
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes the other spirits would add their point of view by showing me Jonathan's story,
Yeah.
you know? So, and the thing is, I didn't really question it per se, and that's why I say it's inspired, because it didn't feel channeled. I didn't have a spirit come into my body. I didn't have anything like that. It wasn't automatic writing. It's I would call the spirits and I would say, "Show me," and I would have thoughts and feelings, and then I could hear them at sometimes telling stories, and so I just like, "Hey, I'm gonna write it all down," and it was easy. Like I didn't have to think about the story; it just came out.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't edit it. I didn't change anything. It just came out. How you're reading it is exactly how I typed it the first time. Um, and the language and dialect is from the South. It actually takes place in southern Texas, so the accent is intentional. The grammar is intentional. See, that was one of the things with the editor, I had to really explain them. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I know you're gonna want to fix the grammar, but don't. So Everything's intentional, like every single thing, every period, everything's intentional.
And as an ESL person for myself, I had to like get used to
The language.
the language and I guess the old dialect and the South dialect
Hmm.
of Johnathan. But after a chapter, you got it, and then you hear him.
Your
And,
brain adjusts, yeah.
yeah, and one thing that I was impressed by in my head, the way I perceive the book is I have to keep reminding myself that this is a child. This is a kid.
He's 15.
He's so young. I want to think that when we are at the end of the book, he's 16,
Yeah.
right? Like a year has gone by, kind of.
A year's gone by, yeah.
But he's so smart, and he has that energy, kind of like the fool on the tarot, like.
I didn't think of it that way. That's interesting. Look at you.
Yeah, look at me.
Yeah, getting all
Because,
the nuances I didn't even get.
oh my God, honey, if I can tell you all the things, look at me telling you, honey, Chris and I are friends. You must forgive me. I honey him twice a day. Um, is not disrespect for those who don't know that we are friends. It's not disrespect. If I were to tell you all the little nuances that I read between the lines, and I think that is also what makes this book so rich, because we all gonna utilize the symbology in a way that it speaks to us, like with the
Mhm.
tarot, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not two people read the tarot the same way, because not everybody sees the symbols the same way. There are commonalities and there are common places, but you also have your personal experiences that go into
Right.
the tarot reading. So to me, again, I see Johnathan like so wise, so brave, um, so fearless. Like he's like, I'm just gonna do the thing, and so he remind me a lot in his own journey.
Yeah.
Uh, it reminds me a lot, like kind of we're seeing the beginning, you know. And
Hmm.
I promised myself I wasn't gonna ask you, but I want a part two.
So yeah, so that's a possibility. However, I am gonna start writing a different book. However, I think I'm gonna keep a similar formula, but it's gonna be different people, different time, and a different locations. So,
Oh,
um, yeah. So I'm gonna start that soon. But you know, the thing we have to remember about Johnathan is at that time, 1870, at 15, 16 years old, you're an adult. You were an adult, and so families didn't coddle you like they do now. You didn't necessarily like, oh, I'm struggling, and I'm gonna go and live with my parents, because a lot of people had a wife and kids and started their own farms and things like that because that's what you did. You know, hell, I can even remember my own family because I'm from Texas, and like if you were 25 and didn't have a family, that was weird, you know. And now, if you're 30 and have a family, they're like, that's weird, that's young. But I can remember a lot of people, and it's very common, especially in the countries, that you get married and have kids at 18 years old.
mm-hmm.
So it isn't so much of a stretch to think in 1870 Johnathan was on his own. And, I mean, granted, it was a little bit sooner than he thought, because his family dies in tragedy. Um, but one of the things I liked about Johnathan is that he shows us how we as humans are resilient, and how we figure shit out. We figure it out because, I think we've all been there to where you're like, oh, I lost my job, or oh, I need a place to stay, and you figure it out.
Yeah.
I think there's something that whole survival mode kicks in, and we're just like, I gotta get this. What am I gonna do? Can we ask for help if we need? And Johnathan certainly asked for help when he needed it. Um, but I liked how he showed us the resilience of people in our nature, and at the same time, he allowed himself to learn and be vulnerable, and he questioned the spirits, but he didn't question the spirits. So like when something happened, he was like, "What the hell? What is this? What's happening?" And then the spirit or whatever, or the gods or whatever would say, "Hey, I'm here to help you," and he would say, "Okay."
Yeah.
At this point, sure.
So, a lot of witches, and coincidentally, this is something that we actually talked about in Mystic Chat not too long ago, but it's on the book. It happens to
Yeah.
be in the book as well. So, a lot of witches did not feel any kind of closeness with the devil.
Hmm.
They feel like, oh no, that is a Christian construct, and we are witches, and we don't work with the devil, and that is a Christianity problem, blah blah. Was that ever a taboo? Was there ever an issue with writing the book? Were you ever thinking like, oh, how are witches gonna receive it?
No, because and Johnathan, I would say he's a traditional craft witch. And at that time you have to remember his family was a church going family. And so when he saw a magical being who had horns and hooves, he didn't think, oh, Carnunos, oh, that's Pan, or oh, that's the horned god. He didn't think that. He thought, well, hell, my my father said if he has horns and hooves, that's the devil. So it must be the devil. And so um you read it, you read the story through Jonathan's point of view, but as witches, as pagans, as magical people, we know the real story. We know that that's the horned god. We know that. But Jonathan doesn't know that. He never had a class or a book on paganism. He doesn't know Greek mythology or or Celtic mythology about Cernunnos and the Horned One. He doesn't know that. He does know stories about the devil having horns. So to him, he didn't know better. And the Horned One being a little a, a trickster sometimes. He let Jonathan believe whatever Jonathan wants to believe, but that's also part of the charm of it. Like there, there are times that Jonathan is very naive and takes things as face value. But remember, at 15 years old, how you took things at face
Yeah.
value until you fell on your face, and then you said, "Well, hell, I just learned something." And Jonathan falls on his face a lot,
Yeah.
but he
And
learns from it. So
like Jonathan, Johnathan, I could hear my accent there, like
I like
Johnathan,
your accent. I like your
Johnathan.
accent. It's cute.
I I keep trying to hide from it, but
Why? It's cute.
well, since you asked me, I'm gonna tell you. Because assimilation is a thing that is demanded in this country by people such as
Mm.
myself that are immigrants. So you cannot sound like you're not from here. But I heard one time somebody said an accent is a mother tongue refusing to letting their child go.
Interesting. I've never heard that
I
before.
cannot remember the poet who wrote it. She is, or they are, a Mexican American person.
Mm.
and wrote a poem, and part of the poem has that phrase, you know. And when I heard that, that kind of switched my perception of it. But this is not the Laura González show. This is the Johnathan show. And let's talk about Johnathan. And now, of course, I lost my train. Oh, like him, and he's telling us, you know, like you say, you know, how many times we fell on our faces at 16. But at the moment, we're like so brave and so naive at the same time. And then again, that's why it reminds me of the fool so much. How many times we did things without knowing what was going to happen, and have our spirit guides or spirit companions or familiars actually taking care of us. I cannot believe right now that I'm 49, soon to be 50. Remember traveling throughout the whole Mexico City from north to south. It's like saying to you that I went from Evanston to what is the name on Aurora, right? At midnight on my own at 17, because I went from one party to the other party. And of course, my mother never knew I did that. And nothing happened to me. Thank you, Goddess. And I'm sure now that I'm this conscious of what I did, that I had all kinds of spirit guides or spirits or angels, so call it what you will, watching over, because, you know, Mexico City is not, but anyway, all the things that he does. And I love that he is very conscious of saying, I have nothing left to lose.
Yeah,
And
at the beginning, yeah.
I am not going to be holding back. And I need to secure myself. And I don't want to give away too much from the book. I mean, I guess if we don't give context, people will never know. Unless they buy the book. So you need to buy the book. How many times he says that, you know, like, I have nothing left to lose. So let me try this. And if it is the devil, fine. And, you know, like all the new things that he keep experiencing, and wonder, and like you say, and questioning, you know, like when he learned that he has to give the name to certain spirits, and he's like, well, folks in the town say that you aren't supposed to give the name. And then the spirit tells him, like, okay, silly, how we're going to communicate if I don't know your name? And then you say, you're a son of the devil, so like, why are you afraid? And then I can only imagine Johnathan going like, yeah, you're right, whatever. Like a kid.
Well, you know, one of the things that people don't understand about witchcraft, you know, 100, 200 or 300 years ago, is that everyone knew about Jesus and the church. Everyone knew about heaven and hell. So why would they choose witchcraft? It's because some of them had to. Some of them, like, I read a story a long time ago about someplace in Britain, someplace to where this a folklorist was traveling through town to town to town, trying to find, like, you know, folklore, charms, home remedies, herbal things, stuff like that. And he found a cottage. It was all dilapidated and falling apart. And he talked to the old woman, like old. And her husband, of course, had died, and his son, or her son, went to war and never came back, so assumed dead. And I don't know which war it was, because it was like turn of the century, like maybe World War I or something. And they didn't have, like, you know, Medicare and stuff like that. They didn't necessarily, and if you were the odd one out, you maybe didn't have family and friends to take care of you, take you in. So she's so charmed. She's so spells. She was a witch for hire. So she did it out of necessity, you know? And I think there's something very powerful about that. And did, the goddess come to her? Did the horn one come to her? I don't know. Um, I think it's fascinating that people did what they had to do. And it's kind of sad because, I can imagine in like the 1500s or whatever, this poor old grandma lost everything. And then on top of that, people want to hang her as a witch because she's old and she's different and she's eccentric. Or maybe she's a foreigner, or maybe she speaks differently, or maybe she has a, a, a disability of some sort that makes her different. So, there's something in our nature and our like anyone that's strange or different or thinks differently or does things differently, we want to hurt them. We want to hurt them. Like it's just this whole like so un hate the, I hate the word uncivilized because I'm a pagan and I like being uncivilized, but it's just shows the brutality of human species. So it's interesting how these people, these witches, take back their own power. And Johnathan did that too. He was like, screw it, I've lost everything. I literally don't know how I'm gonna eat tomorrow.
Yep.
So, oh, some horned one wants to give me magic powers. Fuck it.
Let's do it.
At that
Yep.
point, let's do it.
Yeah. And talking about 21st century, right? Or rather 19th and 20th century, we tend to forget because we live on the 21st century that witchcraft and magic is a system of liberation.
Right.
Liberation from the oppression of the powers that are on top. And that a lot of people, or at least, Native people, people of color, enslaved people who have found liberation after, so many centuries, we still go to that power of magic because it's what our ancestors did. And if they didn't do that, they wouldn't have survived. And that's how all the all religions became they hid under Catholicism and Christianity, like what happened in Mexico, that Catholicism is nothing but, paganism and indigenous customs still and magic, or what happened with the African diaspora religions, like Hoodoo and Ifa and all that kind of stuff, that I know very little about, but you have to do what you have to do to survive.
Right.
And then it is truly humbling when you think how your ancestors had to survive and be resilient, and that you're here by the skin of your teeth because your ancestors did whatever they needed to do. And we tend to romanticize, especially those times of like the drought, like when he's talking about the drought, like back in the day there was no jewel where you can go and buy yourself a gallon of water, and you were at the mercy of the elements, period.
Right.
How
scary is that? Because like I have friends who because I'm from the country outdoors and oh, let's go to even PSG. They're like, oh no, I can't do that. There's no, I mean, there's showers, but it's very rustic showers or whatever. And you have to like cook your own food over a campfire. People are like, oh, I can't do that. Well, 100 and whatever years ago, that was normal. I mean, granted, people had fireplaces and stoves and things like that. If you wanted a bath, you had to go to the well, get you some water, and then take a bath. How they didn't just turn on the faucet and things like that. And so if you had rainstorms or droughts or hurricanes or tornadoes, you just figured it out. And I also I think that that's one of the reasons why witchcraft is so tempting at that point, because you have no control, and then you have, the God saying, "Hey, I can give you at least some control over your life and your health and the weather and other people and things like that." I mean, I would have taken it in a heartbeat, because you know, they didn't have TVs, they didn't have radio, they didn't have electricity. They just figured it out,
Mhm.
and imagine what little you would do have being taken away from you. And the hornet one shows up. Hell yeah, I'm gonna take that magic.
And then taken away at such a young age, like many of our ancestors did, and you're finding yourself alone in the world. Alone. I mean, that is the spirit of Johnathan. That is why it's so. I think all of us that have read the book are so enamored with him,
Mm,
because he comes to remind us that if we were in his situation, we would be doing the same.
right.
Because when you have nothing else to lose, you have everything to gain. Everything.
100%.
You know,
Absolutely.
I love that. So I know I have all kinds of favorite parts of the book, but I want us to tell a little bit more about the actual story, a little bit of details. So tell us which chapter you find more like funny or amusing, or which
Funny?
chapter is your favorite? Which adventure is your favorite?
Oh God, that's hard. Oh, yes, every chapter is like a baby. It's like my child. I can't pick one. I I like the first chapter where he becomes a witch. I like that a lot. I like the chapter where he flies to the witch's sabbat. I like that a lot. I really like the ending. To be honest, as I was writing the ending, or I should say, as the ancestors are inspiring me to write the ending, I was just surprised as everybody else was. I was like, "Oh my God, this is so fascinating." Um, I like the chapter about the fiddler. I like the chapter that takes place in Halloween and the
Yeah.
witch pranks that happen. I thought that was cool. I like them all. I like the chapter here that takes place about the crone that comes on Christmas.
Yeah.
That was cool. Um, I like. I don't want to give a lot away, but
No.
like the parts where Johnathan fails, and he's just like, "Oh my God, I screwed that up." Because in our first couple years of witchcraft, how many times did you cast a spell that we were like, "Oh, that's not what was supposed to happen." Oh my God. Um, well, here's something funny. So when I was first practicing witchcraft, a friend of mine said, a girlfriend of mine said, "Can you make a love charm?" And I said, "Oh yeah." So I made this love charm and I empowered it, and I asked the goddess to bless it and all those things. I gave it to her. Well, a squirrel followed her home because of the charm. That wasn't supposed to happen. A squirrel followed her all the way home, like like 4 or 5 blocks home. And so she put it in this little cage thing, and it called the animal control. And they let it out in the forest or whatever. But can you like things like that, and when things like blow up in your face, and one of the things that I've been doing this for over 30 years. If one of the things I try to remember is, remember when you were first starting witchcraft, and the excitement of lighting the candle, the excitement of saying your first chant and making your first charm bag, or the excitement of when you're calling the four elements, or the god and goddess, and you just felt like, wow, this is the coolest thing. And when you've been doing it for so long, we forget to have that childlike or the beginner's mind. So I try to always have that if I can, like, um, what makes me feel magical? What makes me feel like connected in witchcraft? Because sometimes and you know this, like, you've been doing it so long, you don't need the candle, you don't need the tool, but sometimes I need that excitement. So I'll bring out the cauldron and light a cauldron fire and chant and like dance around and work it up. And so, reading Johnathan's story about how the excitement, it was just like, oh, okay, there it is. There's that childlike excitement. And the parts that were scary, I want to say were scary, they were exciting, scary, like adrenaline, like holy shit.
Right.
Um, and I have found in myself that if I can capture that excitement of witchcraft, my spells are more powerful.
Yeah.
Like if I just ho hum like, oh yeah, this is ordinary, then it is ordinary. It was exciting, and it will manifest in an exciting way.
I love the I think all the chapters are my favorite. I love the when he's on the world of the fairies. I really like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I because you wrote it in a way that we cannot not imagine everything that is happening, to give us all the details so we can actually fill it in our minds.
Hmm.
But I think the part in which I identify myself more with Johnathan, and again, we're not going to give away all of the book. You need to buy it. You need to buy it because it's a great book. Uh, is on Halloween night
Yeah.
when he is almost cornered and he just opens his mouth and
He does his thing.
his identifier comes out and he's like da, 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 da. And I was like, yeah. I was like, yes, 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 because that happened to me. That happened to
Mm.
me in a very scary situation, and I just had
You
to.
found your power. You found your
I
voice.
I literally I cackled because somebody threatened me physically,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I had to cackle, and I just told him go ahead and try. But the way I said it
Right.
came out with so much intent that the poor person couldn't even look at me anymore. And that reminded me of that moment, and I'm like, yes, it's scary, but you're rooting for him, and of course,
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing is like you're on the journey with him and you're rooting for him. You share his loss. He has so much loss in the beginning, and then like, and even when people think that, oh, I got the powers of witchcraft, everything's hunky dory, and it isn't.
mm-mm.
First of all, you got to learn how to use the power. Two, one of the things I teach all of my students is the second you call yourself a witch and mean it, and you say you follow the gods and the goddess and you mean it, then you're their student, and they have to teach you, and they rarely show up and say, "Okay, class, here's your first lesson." They teach you through throwing things at you, experiences at you, and one of the things that took me a long time to learn as a beginner is you're not supposed to succeed every time. Sometimes the gods, they want you to fail so that you can learn from that failure, that feeling, that being upset, that anger, that sadness, that holy crap, what the hell did I do? That remorse, because those are our teacher. When you succeed, you learn, but you don't learn as deeply as those failures. Because every time I fail, like, and you're like, Oh, that was bad, 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 bad. I learned so much.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of Johnathan, because when he succeeds, you're like, yes. And when he fails, you're like, I hear you, honey. I'm right here with
I've been
you.
there.
I want to hug you. Like, how many times did you want to hug him? Like all
Oh
the
my God,
time.
yes, yes, yes.
Like all the time, you want to reach through the book and hug him.
The way I picture him, and I know it's probably not time appropriate, but I really think of him like super scrawny, skinny,
Yeah, probably.
child. And I don't know if he was wearing jeans. I mean, you kept saying trousers.
Hmm.
And I don't know if they're jeans or not, but
I think jeans were invented in like 1880, so about 10 years later.
yeah. But with whatever he was wearing, like I always think of him like also having a hat. He has to have a hat because it's cold. It's hot. It's Texas.
That's funny.
And not a cowboy hat, but like a straw
A
hat,
brimmed, yeah.
type of thing. Um, a very simple man, but a very wise man. And I can't believe I'm saying a man because again, like you say, back in that day, he was a full-grown man and couldn't separate myself of being in the 21st century and thinking like this is a child.
Hmm.
But his adventure it captures our spirits, our young selves are there with him and we're rooting. And I am going to tell you, yes, I'm going to tell you, I can see like the story of other people and like building up the story on the whole town and some of the other characters that we met. I mean, you have so much that if you want to, you could give us out of this
Yeah,
book.
yeah. I counted the townspeople. There's about 20 that that actually speak all together. Like there's, I mean, he lives close to a town, so there's townspeople, but there's so many moving parts too. I was just like, how did they write Game of Thrones? Because I was having a hard time keeping up with the names. I had to write down all the names they gave me. I had to write it all down and keep track and make notes because I was just like, there's so many names. Um, but I will say you don't have to remember all the names because a lot of them just have one chapter. Some of them come back, some of them because I mean it's an ongoing story, and it's a small town. You're gonna run into the same people over
Same
and over
people,
again.
yeah. Yep, yep.
Oh yeah, so it's exciting to see how people interact with him, or how they don't, or how some people like like him, some people don't. But that's how we are. That's how real life is. You have your people who enjoy your company, and some people who don't know how to deal with us. And
And right now, when you say people like and people don't, you reminded me of one of the spells that he does. And we're not going to talk about what the spell he does is, but you took the taboo out of very many needs that the witch may or may
yeah.
not want to access. And that one, the first one that he has the spirits to do for him,
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, like, why is this such taboo on the 21st century? Why couldn't
Oh,
we use magic? I'm gonna say it. Is that okay?
that's fine. Yeah, you
To
can
be
say it.
liked, to be liked. You know,
Yeah.
he was being ostracized. He was being kind of bullied. So why not use magic to be liked, so that people
Mhm.
can see who you really are? That really touched my heart. That was one of those moments that I wanted to hug him, like, oh my God, honey, I like you.
You know, I think a lot of people come to witchcraft because of oppression, of bullying, of feeling alone. And what's interesting though, um, when I first started, first back in 1992, I was in high school, and I kind of I come from a large family, So I liked that this was my little thing that was just for me because I have three brothers, so we share and fight over everything. So this is something that was just for me. A lot of people come to witchcraft for the opposite reason because they are isolated and they feel oppressed or hurt or whatever, and it's power. And the thing is that one of the things I try to teach is power is important, but try not to have power over people,
Mm-hmm.
share the power with people. That's why we started the Fellowship of the Phoenix to have a queer community so we can share power with people. And, um, but yeah, Jonathan's an interesting character about he's human. He's human in all the ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the things, speaking of funny, one of the things I kind of chuckled with is he was very naive about sex and sexuality, like very naive. And so I had to chuckle because I was just like, if those situations happened today, we'd be like, man, who cares? In 1870, I'm sure it was scandalous. It was a big scandal and
Yep.
everything. So I just thought it was so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the book, and obviously for people, because it's not like I said, in my opinion, it reads like a novel, but it has a lot of teachings in there.
He
And then
has the spells in the
also,
back.
and then also you have the spells on the back.
Yeah.
And for those who might or might not be a little apprehensive about calling on the devil, um, how much wiggle room, now I'm asking the teacher, as you present yourself on your page, right? Author, teacher, and
Healer.
healer. So now I'm not talking to the author, I want to talk to the teacher now.
Yeah.
How much wiggle room is there on those spells? Do you think that we can switch around certain things and not
Of course. Absolutely.
necessarily say the
100%.
word devil?
Yeah. Yes, you can say horned one because the reason I use the devil and the reason Jonathan uses the word devil is just like I said before, that's the only term he knew. He didn't know about the horned one. He didn't know the god of the witches. He didn't know that. He just knew what he was taught in church, you know. And so if you want to, and this is how I feel about all spells. If you want to change it, change it. I want you to change it. It's like I think if you hear of a very, very, very a beginner and maybe try your spells as is. I mean, you can change certain the names and stuff. If you think you know what you're doing, you can change everything. Because I look at it this way: if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then try a different way. Try something else. Because that's what I do. I can't. My very first spell I cast, I didn't like how it was written, so I rewrote the chant, and it worked for me.
Yep.
And I was 17 years old, so
That's awesome. That's so brave. It
I
wouldn't.
didn't give a shit. I was one of those kids where I was like, screw it, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. I've always been more of a just working with what's inside, I don't like a whole lot of like, and to each their own, I'm always saying like, you do you, boo, right? Do the magic
Yeah,
that works
yeah,
for you. I am not the kind of like, I have to have the big old cauldron and the super shiny athame and that just, it's never been my kind of magic. I'm like the kind that is just here, or
yeah.
just light the candle and it's done. Um, but like you say, if Johnathan reminds you to to do the thing. I love the I'm now talking about the spells and the incantations. I
Mhm.
have forgotten about the box.
The
And
spirit box?
I have totally, again, because I'm not that kind of witch that does, I totally forgotten about the box, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, the spirit box. And it's so cool how you put it all there. So, of course, for folks that are questioning, am I going to learn anything about magic on this book? Heck yeah,
Absolutely.
a
Yeah,
whole bunch.
absolutely.
Not only you're going to learn the spells, but you're going to learn the technology behind the spells
Right.
and why you're going to do the thing the way, because Johnathan is telling you again, is teaching you the best way that a teacher can by sharing his experience. So, tried and true. It worked for him. So feel safe to do it. And there are great spells, by the way, so I do love them. And is there anything I haven't asked you that is very important that we tell people about?
I don't know. I think this was very thorough. Jeez Louise. Yeah, I mean, I would just say it's a fun story. It's informative. It teaches you magic. It teaches you his thought process. It teaches you technique. It teaches you nuances of why we do things and blah 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 blah. Like it's a lot because Johnathan talks a lot. So
Maybe that's why I like him so much too, because
yeah,
we are talkers.
yeah.
All right, so the $64 million question: where can people get your books, sir?
You can find them at crossandcrowbooks.com or on Amazon. Um, Either is fine. I will say the boys, I call them the boys, the Mallory brothers, they are really good about shipping. So I know every time I order directly from the publisher, it takes like forever to get the book. These guys are like, go, 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 go. Like, uh, I think they're having so much fun with publishing. Like, I've never seen people enjoy something so much in my life. Like they are like so ex when you walk into their office, they're just having fun.
Yep.
You know, have
Yep.
you been to the office? It's just there's like 4 or 5 people there, and they're just doing PR and research and editing and this and that, and everyone's so happy.
Not
So
only not only have I been to the office, but I'm gonna make people jealous because I have a unique copy.
you have the what is that called? The
Unbound, loose pages, loose leaves. I don't know.
well, there's a name for it. It's the preview. So when the printer,
Galley,
what's it called?
galley.
Oh, when the printer sends you a mock-up of the book, it doesn't have the spine, and so it's just yeah, it's just loose paper. So yeah, you got the one and only
The one and
editing
only.
proof.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And next I see you in person, of course, I'm going to ask you to autograph this
I
one
am
because it
absolutely.
is, and I love that, because it is on the condition that it is. I have it with a little rubber band so nothing goes away. And, it's got all the little wear and tear from going back and forth, but I love it. Um, for those who are just listening, imagine a bound thing of paper with a rubber band and or come and watch the video. It's gonna be on YouTube. Anyway, thank you so much for being on the show. As always, you are a wonderful teacher, author, and healer. And I love the work that you do. And I also love that we're friends. I'm very, very fortunate to have you.
Aw, you're so
Thank
sweet.
you. And
You're my favorite show. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody, but you're my favorite.
I love talking to people. I love talking.
Right.
Good talk.
Me too.
B, I love talking to people, and I love talking to people that know what they're doing and they have not a chip on their shoulder, but rather their feet very well planted on the ground. And you're one of those folks. And also, for people who don't know, this man cannot get mad. He just does not have the ability to get mad. And I run on anxiety and clockwork, and so I love that he don't get mad, because I'm always like, so what time are we doing it, and when are we meeting, and what are we doing? And behind the scenes I'm like I don't know, I'm very like love to plan everything to the minute, and Chris is like, sure, whatever. I just love that about you. So what are plans? Where are you going next? Where are you going to be doing towards the end of May? Yourself? What's going on?
The only thing I'm doing is I'm going to start writing a new book. Because the Malloway brothers are breathing down my neck about it every time I see them. I see them a lot because the publishing company and their store is like 2 blocks away from my house. So I see them constantly. So they're always breathing down my neck about a new book. So I'm gonna start that soon. Um, and we'll see what the spirits tell me to write. Because it won't be the same kind of book, but I will let the spirits inspire me again. So I'm excited to get that started.
People might say I'm biased, but I am. I'm going to tell spirits to talk to you about Johnathan next adventures. I just love him. Anyway, thank you for being here. And before everybody goes away, I just want to remind you all to keep listening to Lunatic Mondays. For June, we're going to have Corey Thomas Hutchinson. I hope I'm not destroying the name. The book is North American Folk Magic. I wrote a blurb for that book. I can't believe I actually wrote a blurb for a book. So Corey Thomas Hutchison, North American Folk Magic on June 12th, and on June 26th, Matthew Ash McKernan, Weirdcraft. So those are the next 2 books that are on my nightstand. Now I have to be reading those. And these are the folks that are coming on June on Lunatic Mondays. But CSNP is a whole network, and we have shows on Spanish and Portuguese every Saturday on Paganos del Mundo or Pagaos do Mundo, which means Pagans of the World. 2 Tuesdays a month, we have Circle Talk with Deborah Rose. The 3rd Wednesday of the month, we have Circle of Nature with Reverend Selena Fox. 2 Fridays a month, we have Song of the Pagan Tribe with Kern Green. And on the 3rd Friday of the month, we have Blue Marble with Charlotte Bear. And of course, 2 Mondays a month, we have Lunatic Mondays with yours truly. So please join us. You can listen live or you can listen later. You can find us on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn. You can find us on the Circle Century website. And what do you know? We have over 950 hours of podcasts that you can listen, download, share, keep for your archives, and learn from all the wonderful guests or all the wonderful, some shows have guests, some don't. Learn from all these people, and please listen and share, because we put a lot of work into this network because we love you and we want to share that knowledge. And speaking of love, yes, Chris Allaun, I love you.
Oh, I love you too.
I'm so very happy that you were able to come to the show, especially to talk about this book that I really like so much. And thank you always for being such a wonderful human. And I'll leave you the microphone so you can say good night to your audience.
So I appreciate everyone listening. Laura and I can sit here and talk for hours and hours and hours and go off on tangents. I think that's why we're friends, because we like jump on each other's tangents and we just go with it. Like I love it. So thank you, everyone. This is always fun, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And until we meet again, never forget that you are loved. Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us on the Circle Sanctuary Network podcast, presented by Circle Sanctuary and produced for all who follow nature-centered paths. Join us throughout the week for various programming connecting with the community around the world. Please don't forget to watch for updates on the Circle Sanctuary website at www.circlesanctuary.org. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/CSN Podcasts. We can also be found on your favorite podcast hosting sites such as iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and others. Until next time, many blessings.